Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Stripped by Sia, your podcast for strippers, sex workers, and all the fancy naked people in between. I am your host, Steph Sia, otherwise known as Kimchi, on the strip club stage. I am a stripper, I'm also a former sugar baby, and I'm also a content creator based here in Vancouver, Canada. And I am the host of the show, and I bring this show on every single Sunday for the past couple of years to help destigmatize sex work, to provide a better understanding of the work that is that we do, and also to validate the work that we do as well. Just because there's a lot of misconceptions, there's myths and stuff about sex work, and I'm just trying to do my little part in trying to again be transparent and humanize sex work and its workers. So every single week I bring someone on new, and I am really, really, really excited to announce this week's guest. Of course, it's no different than any other week, but this one we're going way across the pond. We're going all the way to Belgium. And before I announce who I'm bringing on to the show today, I just quickly wanted to shout out some of our Patreon subscribers. So big shout out going out to Arab Sarkar, Justin Erickson, Jay Sunsern, and Paris Frank for being on the top tier to help support the show. There are other people that are on the level 1 and level 2 tiers as well that are also big helps to the show. But it's just a way to help support in terms of giving me your feedback, also just getting in touch and just getting sneak peek views on video content, or just trying to help me decide who I should be interviewing and what topics we want to be interviewing on, and just basically what you're interested in. So if you are interested in that, feel free to peep the Patreon page, which is patreon.com/stripbysia. But for now, we're going back to this week's guest, and I am very, very excited to finally meet. It has taken a bit of coordination because this person is located all the way in Belgium with a 9-hour difference. So I am very excited to bring Quentin Deltour onto the show from the organization in Belgium called Espace P, which is a sex worker friendly based organization that he will go into speaking about. And we are going to be talking about all about the decriminalization model that is brand new to Belgium. It's the first ever European country to decriminalize sex work. And this decision was made back in March, which is when I reached out to Quentin. So it's taken a lot of time, but we're finally here. Quentin, are you there?
Hello, Steph. I'm very, very honored to speak with you. Thanks for having me. And through me, thanks for having all the sex workers that we are meeting and that are very honored to, be able to communicate with your wonderful project.
Yes. It's truly an honor, honestly. And I would not have been able to connect with you if it weren't for the sex workers that are on Twitter that I was connected with, that connected me with other sex workers that are Belgium based. And they were like, you need to reach out to Espace P. They're a great organization, which led me to you.
This is the result of the work we are doing on the field. And of course, we are known by the sex worker because we are a very, very, very small country. Belgium is 11 million people, and of course, it is a very complex country. We finally managed to change the law, and well, this is a small step, but this is a very high symbol for us and maybe for the rest of Europe. And I'm sure we're going to speak about this.
Oh, yes. We are going to be speaking about it all today. It's a pretty big topic. It's also a very, very exciting topic. But as you mentioned, it is just one small step in to achieving, I don't know, equality, just having our profession validated. It's a lot, and it's a huge landslide. It's so prominent because even us here in Canada, we are also always constantly looking to other countries where the decrim model is available. And to be frank, there aren't a lot, and there aren't a lot of countries that we can as look up to in terms of like being a role model. So I know we're definitely going to be diving real deep into that topic, but just to give the audience a bit of background, I'd love to hear more about Espace P as an organization, and of course hear about yourself as well.
Okay, Espace P is a non-profit making organization, non-governmental organization, and we were born in 1985. This is during the very beginning of AIDS program. You have to understand that Belgium was very much looking abroad to see how they were fighting against this unknown illness that AIDS was. And they were trying to find energies amongst the organization, the non-profit making organization, to structurate, understand this, to model a system to fight against AIDS. And of course, the first people who were targeted by this system were gay people and probably drug injectors. And AIDS was very much unknown, so we were developing programs to make some prevention. Is that word correct? Prevention against AIDS, and some energies ended up in making organizations, and these organizations were targeting some specific audience or specific public, and they were discovering the illness while fighting against it. And one day, some people were connecting together to share experience and to share knowledge, and they were thinking that maybe we are too much focusing on our public, and we are maybe forgetting something else or somebody else. And they thought, oh my God, there is also this world of sex work that we are not thinking about, and maybe there is some kind of public health concern that we are completely forgetting. And so people organized a survey. This is really the foundating survey for Espace P. They organized a survey amongst the sex workers to know what they knew about AIDS, what they were doing, the practices. So what eventually was exposing them to AIDS, and they wanted to know also what they were objectively making to protect themselves. And this is a survey that helped them, that led them to contact 500 prostitutes, sex workers in Belgium, which is a huge amount of sex worker, especially for that moment in Belgium. And so they realized that sex workers were very aware of AIDS, very aware, and there was a high consciousness
Consciousness, you got
about
it.
the public health concern connected to AIDS, and this is the reason why we existed, even though this very high amount of knowledge, there were practices that were not connected to this knowledge. This means people were taking risks, sex workers were taking risks, and this is the reason why some doctors and some people from the medical world decided to create Espace P. Espace P was named at the very beginning from the worst name you could imagine, PSP, Prevention Sida Prostitution, which means Prevention AIDS Prostitution, which is the most stigmatizing word you could imagine. So that was the first title. Nobody wants to go in a house where it is written
Right.
prevention AIDS prostitution because it is too much stigma connected to it.
Lots of stigma.
And well, that was our first error, but we learned from that error. Slowly, we discovered that you cannot be happy with just giving the good practices to say what you should do. You have to understand why sex workers sometimes are taking risks. And this is
Yes.
slowly by little, we discovered that we could not be only an information program. We have to go
Right.
deeper in the mechanisms, and we have to understand why the society is leading a whole population, a whole portion of people who are doing this work to take risks. And so we discovered that we had to listen more. We had, of course, this sounds very obvious now, but at the very beginning, everybody thought if you say to everybody how to avoid AIDS, they will avoid AIDS. And of course, this is not exactly like this. It doesn't happen necessarily like this. And of course,
Right.
we discovered that AIDS was a very low part of the problem, and more was to think about stigma, about how society considers sex workers, and all the
Yes.
problems sex workers meet in the society, and this happens in every field of the life of a sex worker, from the morning when they get up to the other morning when they go to
Yes.
sleep. At every step, when you go and drop your children in the school, you are a sex worker and there is a problem. When you pay your taxes, you are a sex worker and you have a problem. And you have a friends, you are a sex worker and it is a problem. You are a person in the society, you are a citizen, you are a sex worker, and it is a problem. And we discovered that we had to open our action, our program to all these fields. And this is why we became Espace P, which is espace means space. P
Right.
is
Yeah.
P and three little dots. It is connected to a book from Jean-Paul Sartre, an essentialist philosopher, who wrote the
Okay.
Respectuous whore meaning prostitute, and it was called La Paix, P, three little dots, respectueuse. And there is a lot in this book about the stigma of the prostitute and, of course, of the sex worker. And this is why we opened to this name. And after 2 or 3 years, Prevention Sida Prostitution, Prevention AIDS Prostitution, renamed to Espace P. This is how we began.
There we go. There's so much history here in the story of Espace P, and it was also like quite a different time back then too in the 80s, and especially dealing with the
Mhm.
AIDS uh, pandemic too. Like that was a huge thing in the 80s too, where the LGBTQ community were negatively disproportionately looked at as being the creator of AIDS and the spreader of AIDS too. But this morphed into something bigger, it sounds like. And it sounded like you really identified, hey, there are other people being marginalized here. those being sex workers and
Of course.
prostitutes. So it's really, yeah, of course, right? And it's really nice to see that you created this space for them and to listen to them.
Yes, and we discovered also all the facets of
Mm,
the aspects of sex work. This was there's been an evolution for Espace P, which was connected to the evolution of sex work in Belgium. And you probably know that Belgium is somehow like Netherlands, like Amsterdam, where you can see window prostitution, window sex work. But there is also escorts, there is also street prostitution, there is also in sex work in apartments. There is. We discovered our public. We discovered where to extend our action, just because we were there, and just because we were very open to the reality of sex work. At the moment, I must confess that the word sex work was absolutely not existing in French. This is coming from USA, and it happened in our vocabulary at the beginning of of the 200 and so on, and sorry,
wow.
2000 and so on. So at the very
Yeah.
beginning, we were speaking of prostitute persons. We were, building a concept that we didn't want to be too much, well, at all, that we didn't want at all
Mm,
to be stigmatizing, but
right.
there was not enough connection with the rest of the world. There was no internet at the beginning,
No.
and we didn't know all the progress that was happening in other country, and so we were building concept, trying, and even the word sex workers is rather recent for us. We were speaking of prostitute person, but in the idea of prostitute person, it may sound like the person is prostituted by someone else, and it doesn't leave a
Right.
room for people, boys or girls, men or women, who are
Mm,
willing, who decide to go into sex work. So we had to build the concept according to the reality that we were meeting, and we
mhm,
have to be humble about this, because we are not sex workers, and we never pretended that we were bringing the speech of sex workers to the society. We were bringing the speech of social or medical workers to the society, connected to the world of sex workers. But it is very clear for everybody that Espace P is an organization of medical and social and psychological workers doing field work. Does that make sense in English? We don't have a desk where we receive, where we are expecting that sex workers are coming. No, we are going where the sex workers are. We are following the same exact path that, like the Johns, like the customer, like the client's customer. I don't know the name.
yes.
The
Yes.
Johns, is that right,
Yeah.
John?
Both. Yep.
And so this is one of our specialty or characteristic, is that we go to see them.
Okay. Yeah. So it's almost like a community outreach, and you're going to them as opposed to them it being like a space, I guess, like not a physical space that they would go into. It's like you coming to
Yes,
them.
of course we have. There is a place where they can come, and it's open every day. And of course, things happen there. Of course, we are in 7 cities of Belgium. We are opening the space. Espace P is opened, of course, to the sex workers, but this is it's absolutely not our best way to meet the sex workers. It's where, of course, more intensive social work is done, of course, because sometimes it's very difficult to look for an apartment or look for another job if this is the what the person is looking for, or trying to find a lawyer, or this is difficult to do this from the window where or he is working, the apartment
Mhm.
where he or she is working. Sometimes it's easier to do this special work, intensive work from our desk, and of course, sometimes this is what we ask. Come to the office, and we'll do a better work. But if the person, if the sex worker needs to stay in the working place, we are doing the work from the working place, of course.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. So thank you so much for just providing us some insight in terms of, I guess, how Espace P works, the beautiful history that comes along with it, and the work that you're doing for sex workers that are Belgium based. Maybe we can quickly go into, because we want to learn a little bit about you, but if you want to quickly, like, what is your role at Espace P?
Oh, I have personally two roles. I was first employed as public relation, but public relations means relations to outside,
Yeah.
the communication guy. And communication is, of course, bringing our communication to the politics, to the authorities, to the police, to the other organization, to the other social workers, to the town authorities, to the press, to the people in general. This is
Yeah.
all.
Like the society, the general
This is
public.
general public, but also we are aiming we are focusing on making a communication amongst the sex workers. And I have personally written during the 21st years of my activity in this organization about 70 magazines that were distributed to the sex workers. And
Wow.
my real pleasure was to interview sex worker, reflect all the personalities that we meet in the sex work. And this of course is very interesting to bring outside the organization. So for example, the politics, the general public knows the reality of sex work.
Yes.
Also, it helps inside the sex workers community to make a community, because of course there is a community of sex work that are educated, structured, that are politicized, that are willing to make a movement. But there are also, of course, victims of exploitation, victims of pimping. And this is the same world from outside. And everybody has to learn from everybody. And this is how you make a social solidarity. And we don't wanted to, inside the sex work community, there is also stigmas. And there is also,
Oh,
those migrants that are coming and doing a blowjob for much less more than me. I'm
yes.
pointing them as the cause of something negative. These youngs that are who are doing this or this for are ruining the job. And we needed to we wanted to help everybody to understand everybody's reality, if this is possible. So
Right.
this magazine,
Wow.
our intra sex workers community communication, was very important for us. And I would say this is the first thing that we can be proud of. It is that we are not doing any discrimination. We are not stigmatizing migrants, gays, queers, drug addicts. We are open to every reality. We are open to every personality, and we are proposing our services to everybody with without absolutely no limits, no limits. And so this was my job, and this is still my job. Well, sorry, this is your question was, what am I doing there? Well, that's a part of.
Well, it sounds like you do a lot.
This is 20 years of my job, so and I'm not the only one, of course. I'm just communicating what we are doing. So I'm not a social worker. I'm not into the real job. I'm just speaking, and I'm just making links between people. So I have the easy job in our organization. So this is a part of my job, communication inside and outside. This is half my job. The other half of my job is, I don't know, in French it's coordinator. Do you understand what it
Yeah.
can mean? I'm coordinating our team. So we have 7 teams in 7 towns in
City.
Belgium.
Yeah.
This is a small country, but there we have towns, and of course, every
Amazing.
town is different. And in our town, Liège, we have a team, and there are, of course, doctors, educators, social workers, and psychologists. And my part, half my half of this job is making the coordination between. I'm going to go back to some structure of our work. We receive
Sure.
money from the government. This is the main source of our money. And if you want, I will explain you why we are not expecting money from charity. I will, if you feel it's interesting, ask me and I will tell you. But we are asking money from the government because we think that sex work is a society concern. So we want that
Okay.
the state, that the authorities give the money for what is a society phenomenon. So we are not
Mm.
expecting money from charity, and we have zero money from charity. So there is the money that government gives. There is a team with some competencies, some skills,
Okay.
and there is the sex work with needs, expectations, let's make it brutal, sometimes problems. And my job is to make a line between this. The money we are given is always given in a bigger program, and we have to say, to reassure the governments that give us the money, that we are thinking like they wanted the money to be used for. I hope this is
Okay.
clear. And
No, that makes sense.
and of course, we need at the end to help people who needs help. And
Yeah.
between this, we have to organize a complete work. And of course, there need to be a feedback between our work and the reason why the money is given for our work. And everybody needs to be happy about what we are doing. And of course, this is the money from the taxes. So we also have a responsibility towards the main society, because we are using the money from the taxes. So it has to be used for a good
Right.
reason, with good results, and it has to meet the needs. My job in our team is to make a line between these three poles and show that at
Mm.
the end the needs of our public is we are working in the good direction.
Right, yeah, and those needs are met. You have a very large role within the organization, and also, I mean, uh, another reason I got you on the show too is because I really wanted to hear your expertise on the decision made in Belgium as well. But before we dive into that bit of conversation, I just want to maybe quickly discuss the landscape in terms of how sex work is operated amongst in Europe. So, because there are so many countries in Europe, they do things differently. So, from my understanding, and this is just really, really brief Spark Notes version, high level stuff that because we just don't have enough time to go into every single country and what they're doing. um, but from my understanding, I know that there are certain countries in Europe, like Greece and the Netherlands and Germany, and perhaps this was a model how Belgium was before, but sex work is legalized, which means it's allowed under specific and highly regulated circumstances. But outside of these parameters, it is criminalized. Um, so I think that is a really, really brief one liner in terms of like how certain countries operate in Europe. But there's also like Canada, there's also the Nordic model, which is the selling of sex, which is allowable, but paying for it is not. And that is something that you see in like more so like Scandinavian and like Nordic countries. Um, do you have any thoughts about
2 years ago,
that?
France voted the same system as the Scandinavian model. So now, as a John or as a client, you are criminalized for buying sex worker job.
Yeah, definitely. I'm curious to see before we kind of go into Belgium. Actually, we can kind of slowly go into Belgium. Like, what was the landscape of sex work before this decision in March 2022 happened?
So
What
you
did
want
that
me
look
to
like?
start with Belgium or with Europe?
Oh, yeah, yeah. But if you have a comment in terms of how Europe in general operates, we can do that. And then we can kind of, we'll go into the specifics when it comes to Belgium.
In Belgium before March. But you have to understand also that what happened in March is still not in action today because there is a delay between between the moment when a law is voted and the moment when it is really in application. And we are still not right now in that moment because it has to be published in the official law book and it's still not. So there is usually a delay of 3 4 months. I don't remember how much, but this is still the
Okay.
future. And of course, we are celebrating this moment, but it is still not applicable in the law. So right now, it's still the formal law that is in action. You have to uh, uh,
Gotcha.
you have to see that Belgium is a very small country, and the history of Belgium is very strange, and it's very much connected to the countries around it. We are not the result of a people's will to make a country. We are the result of others people impossibility not to make war. So we are some kind of a war between Germany, France, and England. Of course, there is a sea between us and England, but this is the reason why Belgium exists. It's to make some kind of buffer between these big military powers. I'm thinking 18th
Right.
century, so things are clear. When Belgium was created, we had to decide, well, they had to decide which model would be adopted, would be taken. And, well, about prostitution, this is France that made our background. And France was at this moment getting out the Second Empire, getting out of Napoleon conquest of Europe. And of course, you have to understand that at that moment, prostitution in France was half, or, well, a big proportion of the state. This is, I don't know if this is palpable from America, but 18th and 19th century in France, in this period, in this time, prostitution was very much connected to the bourgeoisie, was very much connected to the state, and there were laws to organize prostitution, to provide girls to the bourgeois who needed as a symbolic capital to show the others that they were able to buy girls,
Yeah.
and they could afford it, and it was really in the heart of the system of the state system of the system of the state. And we inherited in our law this culture of prostitution, and our first laws about prostitution were a direct copy paste from Napoleon Code. We did not modify anything, and we just wanted to check girls for illnesses. We just wanted to make sure that every town would have enough amount of prostitutes for the bourgeoisie. And so it was in the heart of every town, in the heart of a complete class. The bourgeoisie was expecting the system to provide prostitution. And so we were in a system that was what we would call reglementation of prostitution, which means authorities can organize a prostitution. That was the first century of the law about prostitution in Europe. Then, in the 20th century, there is a Second World War. All the men are, of course, in Germany, and captured by the German war, and this is the women who are making the country work. And when the war is finished, finally women are getting the right to vote. 1948. 1948. Before this,
Okay.
our democracy was half a democracy. It was a democracy for men, but not for women. Not for women. And in 1948, women are allowed to vote, and this is my point of view. I never read about this, but this is, for me, this is very connected. 48 is also the moment when the law about prostitution in Belgium changes. And in 1948, subscribing to the New York Convention of 48 about abolitionism. Sorry, there's abolitionism. So
Oh,
in 48, we subscribed to United Nations chart on abolitionism. So abolitionism is not is not designed to end the prostitution. It's designed to end the law that are organizing prostitution. So it doesn't mean that prostitution is forbidden. It means that
Mhm.
the government cannot organize prostitution. And this is maybe on the paper, on the concept, it might sound like a good idea. Of course, who is willing to a state that is providing prostitutes to the bourgeoisie? Nobody, of course. It is not thinkable that the governments organize, I don't know, immigration so there is enough prostitutes for the bourgeoisie. This is we could not think about such a thing. But we had 50 years of this system, and the reality of this system is if you just say, okay, prostitution is not illegal, but the rest is illegal. For example, making advertising for your prostitution is illegal. Any kind
Mhm.
of employment means pimping. Making a group of prostitutes is pimping. The life
Mhm.
of the sex worker is practically not possible. And this is what we've been living for about 50 years. It's this system, this abolitionist system that is very hypocritical. You
Right.
cannot close your eyes on one main fact: sex work is work. It is a work.
Yes,
You cannot
absolutely.
make philosophy about is it just an activity? Is it just something they do? It is a work. It has the same
Yes.
function in the society for a sex worker to work as a sex worker as it is for a teacher to work as a teacher. It means that you are working for money, of course, but you are working to have a place in the society and to contribute to the society by your taxes and to have an opinion to bring to the society about the way you are a citizen and the way the society needs to take in account your way to be a citizen. And it's very hypocritical to say, okay, sex work is just a way of life. The state has nothing to do with a way of life. Well, it is not a way of life. It is a way of work. And this, there is maybe there is the same debate in English about the fact is it a profession or an activity? And of course, this is very philosophical because profession is connected to a lot of other concepts, and um, this
Mhm.
is a sterile debate because uh, the people who are not accepting the idea of a job, they're just not accepting the idea of what girls, women are doing with their body. And of course, they are not thinking of the big proportion of men doing the same thing. They are just seeing women doing things with their body, and society has to control this. And of course, society doesn't have to control this.
Right.
Society has to control what kind
Yeah.
of abuse they are exposed to. Of course, the society has things to say about this, but not what you or me or whoever is doing with his or her own body. And the law was very much impregnated with these concepts. Even the words of the law were from another time, another
Right. Yeah,
era.
like another
The
era
word,
almost.
even the words, the
Yeah.
people, some people were in a court because they did things that nobody understands because the words are not used anymore, but the words are were still in the law, and this changed. This is a very little revolution because, in fact, the law was so old that it could not be implemented in the reality. The police knew that there were crimes being done in a lot of places. They knew that some pimping according to the law were happening, but they allowed it because they knew it was not connected to our days, to the reality of our days. And this is the beginning of the problem, is when the law is appreciated by the police. Why would they change
Hmm.
the law because they think the society is not connected to the law? Police is supposed to check if the law is respected or not, and the, and the law was
Supposed
not
to.
made anymore by the society; it was made by the police, which means when they want, they don't look at the crime, and they don't want, they look at the crime, and this is not anymore a democracy, and this is the system in which we are, because it's not completely changed. Of course, this is the theory. We are still in a democracy, and the system is more or less okay in a lot of situations, but in the critical situations, there is no resources in the law to make sure that a real justice is done, and so there are a lot of police abuse that are happening, especially with
Right.
migrants, especially with gay or
Yeah.
queer, because the stigma is still there, of course, on the sex activities, whatever they are. The change that happened is finally, someone took the risk, a minister took the risk
Yeah.
to be kicked out for a good reason, and he went through
Hmm.
the problem and changed completely the law. If you could see just visually the law about prostitution is just, one paper, one face of a sheet, law about
Right.
prostitution in the former system. Well, the system that is still right now, but one sheet of
Right. Right.
paper, and half this sheet is modification of this article, of this of this work. It was not comprehensible. Now they erased everything
Mm.
and start from zero, and they placed the center of the law on consent.
Good. Okay, so this is how it's all starting to kind of unfold too. So sorry, just some quick backstory here. So this I guess by the time this episode airs, I really hope that, it will be in effect, but this first took place at the end of March of this year, where the federal justice minister Vincent van Quickenborne was the one who sent this proposal in, and of course going through all the hoops and the processes that I'm not familiar with in Belgium in a Belgian context. It was approved by Parliament. So this is obviously like a really, really pivotal decision. But I'm sure there were major hoops that you had to get through. What kind of if there was any pushback before, what kind of hesitancies did society have? Did maybe major politicians have? Stuff like that. I'm just curious to hear about that aspect and that perspective.
The major opposition to this text, we met it during the last 20 years. I think there's been 5 or 6 attempts to change the law. Of course, not every time in the good direction, but there's been 5 or 6 attempts to change the law, and Belgium is such a particular system that it is very difficult to change a complete field at a time, because everybody has to agree. You have to understand
Right.
that we have 9 governments in such a small country, and it
Oh
is
wow.
a puzzle to make a very simple decision. So it's some kind of miracle that somebody managed to do it, but this minister that Quickenborn managed to do it. But during the last 20 years, of course, we've been lobbying. Does that make sense? We've been lobbying every
Yes.
government that we met to improve the law, to change the rules, to make them conscious that they could make the difference, that they could do better for the sex workers, that there were a very large expectancy about this, and not only amongst the sex workers, but also in the rest of the society, because of course we meet the rest of the society. We meet the people, the pupils in the schools, the students in the universities. We are, you know, trying to change the mentalities, and we are doing this job also to convince the rest of the society that there is things to do. But the system is, well, we thought that it was nearly impossible to erase everything and start from the beginning with another another system for the sex work laws, and just wanted
Mm-hmm.
during the last 20 years to help change little things. And we did this little by little. Some laws were changed, some improvements were validated by the law, by the government, but nothing like this happened before. And we thought that, well, that was how Belgium is. And for us, this is a kind of a revolution, what happened in March, because all the changes were negotiated between the government, the organization, the non-profit making organization like us, and the sex workers. And these were secret meetings, and the text was, you know, turning between the organization, sex workers, government, sex worker organizations. It was
Right.
a real work, and this is the only way it could
Mm-hmm.
be done. But somebody had to. to make it. And in the politics, well, you know, it's not my kind to always hit on the politics and say they're all stupid people. This is not how I function, but this is what a lot of people say.
Mm,
Well, everywhere, probably in Europe and
right. Yeah.
probably in the world.
And yeah, North America too.
Well, in this occasion, I can say I saw how politics should work, and it works when it works like it should.
Mm.
Well, this is this sounds stupid, but it worked like this, and they didn't only change the law about prostitution. They took all the aspect of the law that are about sex. They erased
Hmm.
it and started zero. So
Wow.
it's not only
Wow.
the rules about prostitution that are changed. It's also the rules about rape. It's also the rules about under consent age. It's also the rules about sexual harassment. Everything now is
Wow.
very much more comprehensible, because if you don't know, you just have
Right.
to think about consent. For example, rape
Right.
is
That's so
not
important.
the very ugly definition it used to be, because it was the definition of rape was, you know, about insertion, about penetration, about uh, there was always
Oh yeah.
a way to
Very
rape
specific
that they didn't think about. Now, rape is any kind of intrusion into your
about consent.
intimacy without your consent. And so, even if I start
Wow.
having a sexual intercourse with someone I met, even if at the beginning it's not rape because there is a consent about what we are doing, if at any moment he or she
Hmm.
decides that no, this is finished, I don't consent to this, or I don't consent from now it is a rape. And this is very easy to understand for everybody. And it is the same in sex
Good.
work. A lot more is about consent.
Hmm. Which is so important. And like, I'm so glad that everything else was overturned and just reimagined and rewritten in today's day and age too, because oftentimes that can be forgotten. So that's really, really interesting and fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing that. I also want to kind of ask you as well, like, because you also said the sex workers were also involved. It was kind of bouncing a bit back and forth between organizations, like incorporating sex workers' voices, politicians, and government. I'm just wondering how you were able to incorporate the voices of sex workers. Was that through organizations like Espace P, or
We
how did you
are
reach?
speaking for ourselves, so we are not bringing the words or the speech of sex workers, but there are sex workers organization also in Belgium, and especially a very recent one that is called Utopie. Well, it sounds like Utopie, and it's an organization of sex workers that is very new, and we prayed for such a thing to exist for 20 or 25 years, because it sometimes happened and then it collapsed. Mixing people in a community of interest, make a community from sex workers is very difficult. Well, as it is for any job, of course.
Yeah.
If you want to make a community of
Yes.
teachers, what they don't have, they have several ones. And for the first time, a few years ago, an organization called Utsopi is made for and by the sex workers themselves. And it is a
That's
pleasure
good.
for us
Awesome.
to see that it happened and that it lasts and that it is very well organized, and it is now very easy. It's a lot more easy for us. For example, there is this tendency of the media, the press, the TV, the radio, the newspapers. When they want to know something about prostitution, or they're going to ask Espace P because they are the expert, they are the specialist. But we hate this idea that we are specialists of sex work. We are specialists of our work, and that's it. And we always told them, if you want to know what sex workers think, go and ask them. Go and do the same job as we do,
Yeah.
and you will realize that there is not one sentences one. There is not only one idea that comes from the sex word the sex work nation. There is thousands of opinions, and you
Mhm.
have to make your job to make a synthesis of what you heard. And if you are lazy enough to just ask our opinion of social workers, well, you're not doing a good job. You're not doing information. You are just sparing yourself from meeting
Yeah.
a reality that is very interesting and that is very much unknown from you, the media, the press, and from the
Mhm.
general public. And so we are so
Oh,
happy that UTSOPI exists. And now we can say, when the government tells us, well, we are writing a new text, a new law about prostitution, what do you think we should do? Well, we are going to tell what we think you should do, and sex workers are going also to tell what they think you should do, and maybe sometimes we don't have the same idea, and this is normal and this is good,
yeah.
and this is their work to choose. I mean, at the end, politics is a hard work because they have to choose which politics they decide, and we are not going to decide for them. We will vote or not vote for them, but they have at the end of the day, they write the text, and after we will fight or against the text. Well, this time we
Right.
won't fight against the text, and well, it is probably easier for us to say it is a good text because we see also that UTSOPI, this organization of sex workers, uh, they are happy too with the text,
Mhm.
with the new text of the law. So we can see it comforts us in the idea that, well, we think the same, but maybe sometimes we don't think the same. I know a lot. I know a lot of sex
Right.
workers
And that's
who don't agree with the idea of decriminalizing sex work. I know a lot of them,
yes.
and they think, well, if my daughter or my son is going to do the same job as me, I don't want it to be too much easy. And well, some sex workers are not happy with it, but I can say now, the government didn't just listen to us; they also listened to you through the organization that bring your voice to the general public.
Wow. Okay. That's this. Okay. This is like completely fascinating, and I'm so glad you're able to make that delineation too. That they really are trying to incorporate their voices in this conversation, because it is important, because a lot of the times no one talks to us, no one thinks about us. They go to all these organizations but not actual, like, not the actual sex workers. So thank you so much for sharing the insight. I know we're going crazy on time here, which is fine for me, but I'm concerned about your time too, because it's really late in Belgium time. But maybe we can close off this portion in terms of, at the time of recording, it is the beginning of May. By the time this is released, I think it's going to be end of June, July. I'm just curious to hear your opinion on how do you think this new law will impact sex workers moving forward, and like have you heard of any feedback from sex workers since? But I know like right now it's hard to kind of say, so it's just kind of
But
opinion based at this
I
point.
can tell you that not much is going to change. You might say, well, everything for this, but, well, not much is going to change, but there are now some further steps that can happen. And in the previous law, in the former law, we were always seeing a wall, a dead end in this law, and now we can think of steps forward. And the main thing that is going to change, this is not an opinion, this is the law. The main thing that is going to change is probably from June or July, the sex work as an employee will be allowed. So, see this from another point of view, it means some kind of pimping is decriminalized. And of course, this is not, we are not fighting for the right of the pimps. We are fighting for the right of the sex workers. But what
Right.
happens now is a lot of
Yeah.
sex workers are also working as employee, and as employee they are not mentioned as the reality of their work. They are mentioned as a waitress or uh, communication hostess or
Oh,
whatever,
yeah.
and this is not true. And
Right.
of course, this is not. This doesn't open them the classical social protection that a contract of employee gives to normally any employee, because of one main reason. If you make a contract as a prostitute was or as a sex worker, whatever the name you give to it, it is still not possible to go and sue your boss because he wouldn't give you, for example, your holiday money, or he doesn't give you the protection system when you are the health system when you are pregnant, or he give the money that you
Right.
are supposed to give to the state when you are an employee, and so that you will get money when you are retired. And all these social aspects of employment are just fake under the system these days, because there is this old law that say when the law is, that we have a special name, but I'm going to translate it with nowadays word, when the law is not moral, sorry, when the contract as an
Hmm.
employee is not moral, it is not applicable. So a judge cannot
Oh,
listen to a prostitute because prostitute is not moral,
right.
uh, and
Right. I did read about this, like this seeing that like sex workers currently, like their professions are not recognized. Um they're not legitimized. Yeah. So there's a lot of
it is
consequences
not
as a
recognized,
result
and
of that.
old concepts are still applicable to it, and this concept says it would be the same, for example, if I make a deal with you for you to give me 1 kilo of cocaine every weekend. One weekend you don't give me the cocaine. I go to the judge and I say, look, I have a contract. she needs to give me 1 kilogram of cocaine every weekend, and she did not, so punish her and bring her to the jail. The judge will say, no, 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 this contract has no validity. Well, it is exactly the same when a sex worker is employed by a boss. Contract has no
Mm-hmm.
validity for the same reason, even even though the sex work
Wow.
is not a crime, is legal in a way, but the contract is not
Right.
legal. So a lot of sex workers want to work under the protection of an employee contract, but they are abused by the boss who pretend, okay, all the social laws are protecting you right now, but if they are pregnant, if they want to retire, if they want to take holidays, if they are sick and need 2 months of need to go 2 months in the hospital. They have no right, no right. Now this is over. Now, in July or June, a sex worker can go see the judge and say, look, my boss is not giving me my salary. Look, he doesn't allow me to choose my client. He doesn't pay the taxes, so I receive money when I'm retired. Then the judge is going to defend
Mm.
the sex worker, and this is the main new thing from the
Good.
law. And probably another one,
Yes.
and it is still not sure 100%, but we are communicating with authorities right now. Probably soliciting in the street is no more a crime as it used to be.
Okay. So there's potentially lots of progress. I mean, once it comes into effect, hopefully by the time this is out, this will be
Yes, yes.
law. Hopefully. But Quentin, we do have about 5 questions that came in from the audience too. If you quickly want to go into these, but they are complex questions, so we'll just see. I mean, I don't have anything after this, but I'm just mindful of your time and the time zone over there too. But maybe we can quickly go into this, and then yeah, we can wrap it up after this. Okay, so the first question is, how do you think decriminalizing sex work will benefit Belgium as a whole?
Well, I think there is a
If there is a
benefit for Belgium as a whole. Bringing citizenship, effective citizenship, to a population that was discriminated is a progress. It is empowerment of sex
Mhm.
worker.
Huge.
If you include a part of the nation that was stigmatized and taken apart from the citizenship, the rules of the country, the heart of the country. Uh, if you bring them back into the society, it is better for everyone. It is better for even people who have no contact with sex workers. It is better to live in a world where everybody has a place and a job to do. I mean, a
Yeah,
job, not a job to win money, but his
absolutely.
role. It is better.
Yeah, a purpose. There's another question came in from the same person. This is from Annie, by the way. Shout out to Annie. Will there be someone keeping track of how this change is going to impact sex workers and the country?
This is, I would say, is this necessary to keep a track when the goal is? I hope I understood correctly the question. Maybe I can reformulate what I understood. What I question is,
Yeah,
are
absolutely.
we going to document the change? Is this the resume of of the question? Uh, in a
That's what
way,
I heard too.
we
That's the way I
are
understand it.
documenting the changes through our job, because everything we do is written in a report that is official, that is returned to the government, and through the government to the rest of the society. They are readable by everybody. So yes, there is a track, a trace that is going to be kept from this change. I would have loved that this question was addressed to those who, for example, in France, decided to criminalize
Hmm.
the clients, because they said, okay, all
Right.
these sex workers are victims, all these sex workers are abused by the clients, and so we are not going to stigmatize them more, but we are going finally to criminalize the client. And they took they
Hmm.
changed the law 2 or 3 years ago, and they did not take a photograph of the system at the moment to see what happened before and after. So it is absolutely lies
Yeah.
when they say, "Oh, we have improved," because there is nothing to compare. Nothing to compare. They cannot say it, and we
Yeah.
know by our contacts with other organizations that violence increased a lot against the sex workers. But they can say the contrary because there is no track of this. And yeah, and so
Yeah. There's no measurement
um,
tools there
maybe I
to
can
measure an
say
outcome.
in the direct, when the goal is really improving, well, the track, the report is not that much important. We know we know we are going in the right direction. But of course, maybe there are side effects that we don't know, and we are going to be we are concerned about this, and we'll keep an eye on this every day, on the possibility of side effects that we didn't think of. So yes, we'll keep tracks. I hopefully
Right.
will keep tracks. Yes.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. I know we had this is kind of like briefly covered, I think, in our discussion. But if there's any other points you want to add in regards to this next question, that'd be great. If not, we can move on. But this next question is, what helped push the courts to vote in favor
You
of
know what?
decrim?
I don't know. I don't know. This is some kind of. I was astonished by this mail we received from the government. This was so unexpected. We didn't imagine it could happen this way.
Yeah.
We thought it would be line after line, decade after decade, that we would change a word in the law, and then a decision after a few would modify some aspect of the law. This is what has been happening during the last 20 to 25 years. So we were not expecting this, and I was really
Right.
impressed, because first, this is not common in Belgian politics. We are changing things little by little. We
Okay.
have no idea of revolutionizing any field of the law in the society, and this is not how Belgium. And also, I thought the subject is too much touchy. Would you say that is too much touchy for a politician to take the risk of his career on such questions. And I
Yes.
always said we have some figures in the politics, and these figures are who voted for abortion rights, who voted for women's
Hmm.
rights, who voted for homosexuals' rights, who these are individuals, we still know their names. I don't know the name of the people who write the driving code. Nobody fought for this, but we still know the name of people who fought against the death penalty. Also, I know the name of all of them, and I thought this was a fight from other eras, and now nothing would change this way
Yeah.
with an individual, a politician who would take risk about touchy subject. And I must say, I'm not from the same. Well, I'm not from a special party, but I would say I'm on the side in the politics. I'm on a certain side, and he's from the other side. So I cannot even say, well, I love him because he's from my side. He's not from my side, and I can only say,
Yeah.
well, you were the right person at the right moment to do this, and of course it's not a revolution, of course, and I think revolution don't happen this way, but it now changes the way people are thinking about sex workers' right, and now more steps are possible, and they were not possible a year ago and of course years ago. Now they are possible.
Right. I love that. I love that. And that's a great answer if you don't know. Like you just don't even know where this came from. It just sounds like it was completely left field, but it is hopefully going to
Hmm.
work, and I think it will work in our favor for the community. So, we have another question here from a Canadian listener. That's from Ellie. Are there any lessons we in Canada can learn to achieve a similar decision
You
in terms
know
of
the politicians, yes. You know everything that the politician needs to know. You know what the society needs to be aware of. You are connected to the reality. So, no, you won't have nothing to learn from this. The politician will have to learn everything from this. And the main thing I can say the politician should learn is dialogue with sex work is the point of equilibrium. If you are above this point,
Mhm.
nothing can happen. After, yes, you can change the things. And this point of equilibrium is speaking, inviting them to negotiation tables, inviting them to convention, thinking and, well, um, being conscious that they have things to say. They don't have one thing to say. They don't all have the same thing to say, but they have a lot of things to say, and
Mhm.
it helps to be really connected to what sex workers are organizing, are proposing to then write text and make law that is an empowerment for sex workers, but that is an empowerment for all the citizens, because sex workers is potentially
Right.
everybody, anybody. It could be the son or the daughter of the
Yeah.
prime minister. It happens. It already happened. So it's not.
Right.
a part of the society made of aliens. It's people like everybody other, like any other people.
Exactly. That's so well said, because oftentimes I feel like sex workers were always othered all the time. We're in this box, so we're separate from people. But no, we need to do a better job of incorporating our voices and allowing us and giving us a space to be heard and acknowledged. So, um, sorry, Quentin. There's just like one more question here, but we kind of already went over it at the end of the interview period. But this person is from Velvet. They are asking, what does this mean from here on out in terms of the decision, the decriminalization decision? I know we just kind of spoke about this before Q&A, but if there's anything
I
else you
need you
wanted
to
to
repeat
add,
the question
feel
because
free
I'm not
to.
sure I understood it.
Oh, sorry. So this person's asking, in terms of decriminalization, what does this
From
mean from
on
here on
out,
out,
this is
say from
the
this
point
day
I don't
forward?
understand.
Ah, I guess from here on out is like from moving forward from this law, this becoming law.
Okay. Sorry,
Where can
sorry.
we go from
Oh,
here? What can we expect?
we
Yeah.
know what is our next step. The next step is, this was the change happened is penal code, so the crime code. Now we want to attack the work code. So there is many books in the
Okay.
law. I don't know how to explain this, but this is probably the same in every country. So there is the
Yes.
penalty code or the crime code, and this is what's changed. Now, if it is possible, and it is from now, if it is possible to work as an employee in the sex work, then we are going to discuss sex workers union. Then we are going to discuss sex workers special rights. For example, as a
Mhm.
nurse, if you make a mistake with a needle and hit yourself with a needle, you have a lot of health security that is proposed to you for AIDS, from hepatitis, for well, and there is a system that is connected to the fact that you are a nurse and you were exposed to a risk as a nurse in your job. Now I want the same for the sex workers.
Right.
Well, AIDS or
Yep.
hepatitis or any kind of sexual transmitted disease for a sex worker will not be anymore the result of her sex life. It will be the result of her job, her or his job. Sorry, and
Right.
this is our next step. Now, okay, there is a possibility for sex workers to be considered as workers. Let's do the rest. And there is a lot of things to
Hmm.
do. So this is one step further. There is a lot of steps further. And well, for example, unions and we have a big history in Europe of workers unions have some power, and
Right.
they have things to say in the law. They have things to say in the government's decision, and they are involved in many aspects of the work law, and this is what we want also to discuss. Let's make a sex worker union with the same power as any other unions of worker.
Okay, yeah, this is really, really cool to hear. And I'm hoping, yeah, these will be next steps. I mean, in summary of your answer, you were, I guess, in the Canadian context, if this were to happen, you were tackling the criminal code, is what we have here in Canada, and then
Yes.
next is kind of tackling the labor issue. Uh, yes, because it definitely is a labor issue because sex workers work, right? So, gosh, this is such a packed episode, Quentin. I am so impressed with you, and I'm so glad we finally got to the opportunity to finally speak and just to hear your expertise on this matter because it's just exciting and just a huge, huge, huge decision. But before I let you go, where can we find out more about Espace P? Like, is there a website? Is there an
You can
Instagram or
find us
Facebook
on
page? Where can we find you?
espacepe.be, BE for like Belgium. So ESPACEP.be. You can look for us on Facebook, Espace P, and you can look for us on Instagram. We are going to have a multilingual website, which is still not online right now. So now it's only in French. There is some pages in English, but not enough. And we are making it right now in 5 languages. So it will be online probably by the end of July. So
Wow.
you can find us there. And of course, we are diffusing, spreading all the news on what is happening with our contacts with the government and with the law that is changing. And of course, we are informing the sex workers through these medias. And so we you can find us well through the classical the platforms.
Yes, absolutely. And all of those links are in the show notes below. So if you haven't gotten a chance to click on those links, now's the time. Give them a like, give them a follow, reach out. You'll probably be speaking with Quentin or one of his associates there at Espace P. For everyone else listening at home, it's Stripped by Sia on all podcast platforms. So everything from Apple, where you can go ahead and give us a review if you really want to, maybe some great things. You can rate it 5 stars on both Apple and Spotify. That's just a really, really great way for discoverability so people can find the show. So you can, again, spread the word because we need to engage more in these conversations and people need to know more about our work. And everywhere else, it's Stripped by Sia on Instagram, on Twitter, and also my Patreon as well, which is patreon.com/stripbysia if you wanted to help support the show. But that is all for this week. I am just so incredibly happy with how this episode is just turning out. I'm just packed with information right now and I need to like decompress. But for everyone else listening, binge more episodes if you want. If not, you'll have to wait till next week for a brand new
Thank you
episode.
so much,
Thank you
Steph,
so
for
much,
this
Quentin.
very interesting conversation. Thank you so much. Bye bye.
You're so welcome. Bye for now. You're listening to Stripped by Sia, hosted, produced, and edited by Steph Sia. Music by Ted D. Graphic design by Maria Bellanderama, and photography by Ian Dabrin.